I know, we've been looking at a lot of architecture lately, so let's look at some paintings. We're going to look at a series of works that were found in Egypt. This one here, the mummy portrait of a priest of Serapis. So what we're looking at is a figure, and we can recognize him as a priest of the religious cult to Serapis because he wears a headband with a six-pointed star, and he has the characteristic three curls. Now, these were indications of a man who worshipped and was a priest in the religious cult of Serapis. Here I'm showing you another artwork that has the image of Serapis. Serapis, or often pronounced Serapis, Serapis or Serapis was one of those Greek-Egyptian hybrid gods, like the ones we talked about in the Hellenistic period. Serapis originates from the Egyptian god of the underworld, a bull named Apis, and it was Grecoed or Greek Hellenized, I should say, into this form with the characteristic Greek long curly hair and beard. And the rise of the cult worship of Serapis started or established in the Greek Egyptian world and continued on and started to flourish in the Roman world. Now, while he's technically a newish god, he has these origins from other older or ancient gods, like I said, the god of the underworld in Egyptian mythology, Apis. And this wasn't seen as a conflict of interest for the Romans. The Romans are a polytheistic or Romans believe in a polytheistic faith with lots of different hybrids and cults throughout the empire. And they tolerated them as long as they continued to pay tribute to or honor the Roman gods, and specifically the emperor, as gods, because for them, they saw happy gods, happy people. And as long as we all keep the gods happy, we'll be fine. It was in the refusal to worship the Roman gods and the emperor as a god that you were seen as treasonous. So here we are looking at the god Serapis and a priest of Serapis. Now, a mummy portrait. What do you mean, Miss Cortez? We haven't looked at mummies since the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians continued the practice of mummification. Here we are looking at a more better intact Roman Egyptian mummy. Now the title of this one, Mummy Wrapping of a Young Boy. What we can see here is the wood panel has been painted in the likeness of the young boy, and we also have some wood feet here. And then the body lays inside of this elaborate wrapping. I love how well maintained or well preserved, I should say, the linen wrappings are. So you can see how they would have been almost braided into these gorgeous designs and patterns. These are Egyptian people, but they're also Roman because Rome is in control of Egypt. So I don't want you to think of these as Egyptian related to the ancient Egyptian world. That's not the same world that these people are living in. If you were to ask these people, they would say they are a part of Rome. They are Roman. So the period style is high imperial. It is taking place in Egypt where they practice their ancient technique of mummification, and these mummy portraits, we can think of them as death masks, just as we did when we looked at the portrait of, or the death mask of King Tut. These are supposed to be ways for the body to identify and then inhabit the figure. These portraits are often referred to as, or I should say many of these portraits are often referred to as the Fayum portraits, and that is because there was a large, well-preserved necropolis or cemetery. Now think about it. we're looking at these paintings. I've told you that paintings don't survive because they are extremely fragile, because they burn up, because they rot away. The reason that we have these portraits, these paintings, is because they were well preserved in the dry, arid deserts of Egypt. These portraits are painted on treated wood, and they are striking in how real and honest they are as portraits of these individual people. They are individualized. There's no generic person. Instead, we look at them and we can really understand the character of each figure. They have their own facial structures, their own facial hair. The details of these portraits are so incredible that art historians are able to recreate the costumes and the jewelry. In fact, you can buy recreated Fayum, or I should say, High Imperial Roman jewelry based on the preserved mummy portrait jewelry that we see. Now, these figures are painted at the height of their lives, and we see a delicate attention to their eye structure, their nose structure, their pallor, right? The artists are paying close attention to the details of the face, and then as you move away from the face, you can see how the details become looser, right? And that is again because of the way that these figures would have been wrapped. Let me move over here. You would have the more delicate brush strokes focusing in on the face, and then don't think of it as unfinished, but just unnecessary to paint the rest of the face or the rest of the body, because it would be wrapped up in the mummy wrappings, in the linen wrappings, right? These figures are so lifelike, it's haunting. Now we can talk about them as elements of faith, the fact that they are still practicing the mummification and belief in an afterlife, and we can think about these as being reflective of the larger body of painting that has been lost, right? We can think about these as being representative of other paintings throughout the Roman Empire and the kind of skill and attention to natural elements of light and shadow and structure. The way that the artists are able to give us highlights and midtones and shadows of the face. This beautiful tentative gaze. The material being used to paint these is called encaustic, and that's your next vocabulary term. Encaustic, a painting technique in which pigment is mixed with melted wax and applied to the surface while the mixture is hot. Encaustic, I'm introducing it here with the Fayum portraits, but it's a material that we have been looking at since the ancient world, or I should say way, way, way in the past. Encaustic was often used to paint those public statues and architecture. I'm just introducing it here because this is a good example of the kind of bright, intense brushstrokes and pigment that encaustic can capture. Because the pigment is suspended in wax, it can create this extreme, vibrant, brilliant effect, like this woman here. You can buy those earrings. You can find Fayum earrings and necklaces just like hers. She must have been somebody of extreme status because she's wearing purple and gold robes, and she's just drenched in this gold chains, and she's got these garnets of stone and pearls, and then these big pearl earrings, and then look at that ringlet of hair. So she has to have some servants who do her hair, and then her hair is held up in these gold chained pins. Oh, whoa, what a woman, right? Now, back to our priest of Serapis. We can see that attention to the naturalism of the figure. We have the crease of his brow. He looks out at us, acknowledging or activating the space, the attention to highlights, midtones, and shadows. It's just stunning. And again, it can then be representative of all of the paintings that have been lost, that it must have been of the style or the taste for people to have these very naturalistic representations of themselves.